In this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and cover some formatting tools. We'll look at functions and formulas, and then we'll do a little work with printing and page setup. So let me pull up Microsoft Excel. I got an example here that we're working with that is a grade book, and just kind of to give you an overview of this. So we got some students here. We have a column with column A with their student name, and then we're going to figure out some class averages. We got the maximum points over here. And I also have, let's look at this column here. Here's a first exam, a second exam, a final exam. Here's their exam total. And then they have some work over here. They have a 50-point term paper, a 50-point homework assignment, and then we need to figure out some total points and then do some averaging here, some semester averages and some class averages. Okay, so as I look through this, a couple of immediate things that I noticed. One, I haven't changed. I have a tab down here I can change, and if I right click on that and I just rename that tab, I'm going to rename it Seminar Grades. Okay, and I hit enter. All right, now there's a little more meaningful name on that. And then I can also, if I want, I could change the color on this. So I'll just give it kind of a little, we give it a little purple accent there. Whoop. Let's try that again. That tab color. Let's see what we have here for colors. Try that one there. There's got a little green color to it. It's not pretty faint still. Let's try something a little. There's a little bit of a more of a maroon accent. That gives a little color to it. All right, another formatting problem I see is right here. I have in my formula bar, it says maximum total points, but then it shows up, it's cut off there. All right, so one of the tools that I can use here is this wrap text. And what wrap text does is it bounces that down to the second line. Okay, so that's one way of resolving that. I could also change the column width by clicking up here and just widening the width out a little bit. And I'll do that because it's cutting off grading assistant right there. Okay, so I can play with those and kind of make all that look nice. So let's do some formulas and functions right here. And so I'm going to start by, let's start right here. I need to find out a class average. So I'm going to use a function for that. And the function I'm going to use is the average function. So I always start a function or a formula, I start with equals. So I'll say equals, and I'll use the average function. And when I start typing it in, you can see that Microsoft Excel is kind of a little bit smart here where I'll actually fill in the different functions. I start AVE and it shows me all the different averages, and I'll just go ahead and move down to average and tab in, and then I can go ahead and select the numbers I want to average. So I'm going to grab my mouse and I'm going to select these three values, and I'll end that with a parentheses. So equals, and then the function here is average. All right, and then we choose that block of cells. Now let me do this too. Let's make this bigger so you guys can see this. And I'm clicking down here in the lower right hand corner where I can zoom in. Yeah, that's a little too much, but let's try that. All right, so to review that again, there's my formula, equals, then the average, and then I go up and select that block of cells. And when I choose a block of cells, it's also known as a range, and my range goes from B4 to B6. Okay, so my average here, and that looks reasonable. I always check for reasonability on here, and I got somebody at the 44, 198, and so 81% or an 81 average seems reasonable. Now I'm going to use my fill handle, and I'm going to drag that across so I don't have to repeat that formula 3 times. Okay, and so again, I check for reasonability, and that all seems fairly reasonable. My exam total, I'm not going to worry too much about that for any statistical information. But papers here, let's look. I got term papers and homework papers. That's of interest to you. So I'll use copy and paste here. I'll say copy this formula. I can paste it. Okay, paste over here. All right. Now I have, whoops, guess I didn't do that. I'm going to use Control V here. All right. Now I have another need over here where I need to total some points. And what I want to do is I want to take really this value and add it to this value and add it to this value. Okay, so my maximum points here Okay, my exams are going to be about 300, right? Would be maximum exams, and 50 and 50 is 400. So I can look down here too. I got my total number of points here is 400. That was kind of given in this exercise. So let me add these up. I can either use, I'll do it two different ways. One, I can use the sum function. So I say equal sum, and then I go ahead and select those values, that range of cells that I want to go ahead and add up. Okay, that's the easiest, probably the best way of doing it. Okay, and I say best, meaning it's the most efficient. I could also add these up separately. So I could say take E4 and add to it F4 and add to that G4. Okay, that's another way of writing that formula. That's correct too. I'm going to stick with the sum. I believe that's the most efficient. I'd like you to use the most efficient methods here. All right, come up with 269. And I'll just drag that all the way down here. Okay? And again, I'm looking for reasonability. I can kind of do a little estimation here, and that seems like reasonable numbers I'm getting out of this. All right, let's, I'm going to delete these here because we're going to do this one again here. Well, that's an interesting problem I have. Here I'm getting an error message, and it says that I'm dividing by 0. If I look at that particular average, or that what I'm trying to average there, I don't have values in there, so it can't average, so it gives me an error. It says I'm dividing by 0. That makes sense. Let me delete that one too. Okay, so let's come up with some averages here, and I'm going to introduce the difference between a relative reference and an absolute reference. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'll do it here anyways. So I'm going to say go ahead and take this particular point total and then divide it by the total number of points that are possible on this, okay? And my total number of points that are possible are found right over here. So I have 400 points possible. But rather than say 400, I want to use a cell reference. Okay, so my average is going to be the total points they have divided by the total points possible. All right, so I can come over here and I'll just click on that cell. So it's, again, cell references. H4 divided by B9 would give me the average. Okay, so here's the total points earned by this person. Here's the total points possible for these assignments. And that averages out that individual earned a 67%. All right, let's do that formula again. Well, actually, let's copy her down here. Okay, so I use my fill handle here. I grab on that. And if we did this right, we should get averages there. Whoop, we got a problem here, folks. I'm getting a division by 0 here, and then I'm getting another error message that's saying that this is not a possible value. Okay, so let's look at this. So here it worked. If we look at this, it was H4 divided by B9. Okay, and there's B9, there's H4. Bounce down to this one here. I take B5, right, because it increments. We learned that about copy and paste in the fill handle. So it incremented down to B5, but then it took B9 and also incremented that to B10. And that's not going to work for me, is it, in this particular application? Let's check this one out. Same thing here. Okay, I got B6, okay, which it incremented here, but I didn't want it to increment here because I can't divide by a label here. All right, so we need to make an adjustment if we're going to use the fill handle here. So what I'm going to do here is this is known as a relative reference. Anytime you reference a cell and you expect it when you copy or paste for it to be incremented, then we want to use a relative reference. Here what I really want to do is use an absolute reference. All right, and we're going to use kind of this formula both in a relative reference and absolute reference. So as we go through this problem, we want H4 to be incremented. We go down and copy it down to the next cell. We want it to be H5 in the following cell, or H6 after that. But we don't want B9 to ever change. We want it to always be the same. So that's an absolute reference. So what I'm going to do here to indicate that's an absolute reference, I'll put a $sign in front of the B and a $sign in front of the 9. All right, and that'll take care of it for me. Okay, so we can have absolute references, and we indicate absolute references with the $sign, or we can have a relative reference. All right, so I do that now. All right, and I still get the same value here, but watch what happens when I pull my fill handle. Do you see how? Check this out now. Okay, my reference that was relative incremented down to H5, but my reference that was absolute hasn't changed. It's still B9. Okay, so that's handy tool here again. Now, something else to kind of keep in mind as you use an Excel here, the difference between an absolute reference and relative reference. We're really going to make heavy use of that throughout the semester. All right, well, I think I got things in order here. Feeling like I have a pretty well organized spreadsheet. Let's do this now. Let me go to print, and so I'm going to go over here to the file menu. All right, and I go to print. Here's my print button. And this has changed extensively from, I don't know if you're using Office 2007 or 2003 package. This is really kind of a completely different looking interface. Clicking on print here. One of the things that I'll find over in this pane is I have a print preview. And if I look at that, I have a huge issue. And I find this with students, and they're always losing points in initial assignments here, because if I really were to go to print this out, it would print on 2 pages. All right, so my my output would look pretty cruddy. All right, because I couldn't, well, it's not very professional looking. All right, so I can fix that. So some of the tools that I can use here, they're all found here. First one I'm going to introduce is portrait versus landscape orientation. Okay, so if I want to take the page, anytime you see it where it's vertical like this, we call that portrait. And what I want to do is rotate it so that it's the long end is horizontal, and that's known as landscape mode. All right, so that might help me have a little more well-organized worksheet here. So I'll pop it to there. All right, but I still I have the same issue going, don't I? Still on 2 pages. So there's a couple things I can do here. One, I can control the margins. Maybe I widen out the margins a little bit. 2, I can go back in and I can change the width of the columns, because I have it looks like I have some oversized columns here. That might be helpful. Or 3, there's also a setting here where I could go ahead and I can shrink it so it'll fit. Okay. Let's start with first, I think I got big margins on here, so let's get rid of some of these margins I have here. So I'm going to customize the margins, and I can go take a look at that. I'm using normal. I could go with a wide margin. Let's use a narrow margin, or else I could customize it. I'm going to go narrow. Okay, and that gives me a little more. Am I pretty close on that? Well, I'm better, but I'm still dumping semester average over. All right, so let's clean this up some more here. Now I think I can make all my columns just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go back over to my worksheet here. All right, and I'm going to select them all. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to zoom out so we can see the whole works here. All right, so I'm going to select them all. I do that by holding down my mouse button and selecting across the top bar here. And I'm going to look at my column width. Okay, right now they're all at 14 or 15. I'm going to just change that to 14. I'll make them a little narrower, but I bet they all fit that way. And I just chose columns B through I. I left this column A a little bit longer. And let me go back over to File here, and I'll go to my print. And if I preview it here, I look down here, I see I only have 1 of 1 page, which is great. So I got it down a single page. All right, and I could probably even narrow it from there. If I say, oh, I don't like my margins, let's place some more. We'll go back to normal margins, and it still overflows. I think I have room over here to select those again and change my column width. Maybe I'll change it down to 12 this time. All right, that looks reasonable. All right, so I go back over here, we go to print, and I do have it all on 1 page. Great. All right, some other things that I'll kind of wrap up with here. If I want to put some, let's look at page setup here. I have some more granular controls here where I can control my margins. Here's what I want to show you. I want to show you some headers and footers. So I can put a custom, let me put a custom footer in here. And I can put the tab name on it. Actually, I could put the date on it. There's all sorts of interesting things I could put on here for headers and footers. So let me show you one of them here. So I could put a footer on there that says seminar grades. Okay, and now we can see it listed at the bottom of the page here. All right, well, that's maybe helpful. Let's put some other information in here, though. Let me go back into my page setup, and let me create a custom header. And in that header, I'm going to put it right in it. Well, let's put upper left-hand section. I'm going to put my name in here. I'm going to put the date. Actually, rather than do that, I can use the date symbol here. Where's my date guy? It's one of these guys right here. There's the time. I want that. I think it's the one right next to it. Here's the date. So this will show me the date that I printed it. And then I'll put the class. CSCI 172, Intro to Computer Modeling. Okay, so hit OK. And that puts it all up on the top there. You see it. Now the date's going to change depending upon, whatever the current date is. And so this all looks pretty good, but I'm still kind of crunched down here. So let's change the margin a little bit. We'll go back down here, and I'm going to do a custom margin. And so I'll take the top margin. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. So I made it 1.5 inches. Okay. Now things fit a little bit better.